Hi there. So today we're going to be doing property law from Unit 2. So over here, property is divided into two kinds, movable property and immovable property. Movable property is governed by the Sale of Goods Act. It includes things like timber, crops, grass, so on and so forth. Now there are two important cases here. One is Marshall versus Green that establishes that timber includes as movable property. And another, Shantabai versus State of Bombay, which establishes that if the intention is to reap fruits from the trees, then it is regarded as immovable property. However, if the intention is to cut down the trees and use it as timber, it would be regarded as movable property. These two cases, as we've seen, are quite similar. Now, coming down to immovable property, it's governed by the Transfer of Property Act. The term property is not defined in this act. However, we can say that any right that denotes an economic value is a property. Any property that is equal to or less than 100 rupees is tangible, and no registered instrument is required for its transfer. However, if the property is more than rupees 100, then it requires a registered instrument for its transfer. And this instrument should include the rights, liabilities, and obligations of the transferor and the transferee. Now, the requirements here are that both parties must be present and attest on the registered instrument. Two witnesses also must attest on the instrument. It should be registered in the registrar's office and should also carry the registrar's seal. Now we come down to the conditions for a valid transfer. For a transfer to be valid, it should be between two or more living people. The property in question should be free from any hindrances. Now, we can take an example here that should not have any pending litigation on it. Thirdly, the object or consideration should not be unlawful. For example, the sale of drugs. Fourthly, the mode of transfer must be proper. For example, it should be registered. Now fifth, in the case of a conditional transfer where an interest is created on the fulfillment of a condition, the condition should not be illegal, immoral, impossible, or opposed to public policy. For example, a wager. Let's take betting. If someone agrees to transfer an object on the condition that, say, team A is going to win so and so match, that is a wager. So in such a case, the transfer would not be legal. Lastly, sixth, the transferor must be competent. The transferor must have a right to the property, or if not so, the transferor must be authorized to be able to dispose of the property. For example, the transferor must have a mandate of some sort. Now we come down to the doctrine of election. The doctrine of election states that we can't accept and reject a single transaction. The logic behind it is that while claiming the advantage of an instrument, the burden of the instrument should also be accepted. For example, I want to buy a house, right? And the house has a garden attached to it. I can't say I only want to buy the house and I don't want to maintain a garden. I don't want to be mowing the lawn and watering all the plants all the time. So I'll only buy the building and not the garden. You can't do that, right? So that's where doctrine of election steps in. After this, we have lis pendens. Lis pendens basically says that nothing new should be introduced in a pending litigation. So this is usually taken in regards to immovable property, and the conditions to be met are that firstly, there should be a pending suit. Secondly, the rights of the party should be in question. Thirdly, the parties should be trying to transfer the rights of the property onto someone else. And fourthly, the rights of the parties must be affected. So the first point is very straightforward. There must be a pending suit. Secondly, when it says that the rights of the party should be in question, that means that they should be trying to figure out who the property belongs to. The third one basically states that someone should be trying to sell off the property essentially, or transfer it or give it as a gift, which we will come to later. But someone must be trying to transfer the rights of the property onto someone else. Fourthly, the outcome should affect the rights of the parties. Now, for example, I and my sister are fighting over the rights of a property, right? So If she wins the case, then my rights over the property are affected. So it gets a little tricky, but once you brush up on it enough, it's quite clear. So after this, we come to the different methods of transfer of a property, which includes sale, lease, gift, so on and so forth, and also exchange. Now, a sale basically means the transfer of ownership or rights to a certain property in exchange for a price, and that price must be money. So, there are some essentials for a sale to be valid. Those essentials are that there should be two different parties, the seller and the buyer. Both the parties should be competent to transfer, which means basically that they should be mentally stable, they should genuinely have rights over the property, and shouldn't be minors, those things. So the property to be transferred should be in existence, consideration for the transfer should be money, and the contract should be in accordance with law. Quite straightforward. So now let's come to Madam Pillai versus Badarkali. What happened in this case was a man had transferred a property of his worth ₹100 to his wife orally, and later when he tried to transfer the property onto someone else's name, his wife went to court saying that she rightfully owned the property, and then he said no, there was no registered instrument over there. However, his wife won the case, reason being, since the price of the property was ₹100, hence it was tangible, no registered instrument was required for the transfer of ownership. After that, we come to lease. In a lease, it's the transfer of right to enjoy a property and not the transfer of ownership. Okay, so now let's come on to Rombe versus Badarkali. So this case basically discusses the concept of sublessors and sublessees. There was a theatre, and the theatre of course had an owner who leased it out to a lessee. Now this lessee further subleased it to a sublessee. Which made the original lessee the sublessor. When the original owner wanted the theatre to be emptied out, instead of contacting his lessee, he directly contacted the sublessee, which he's not supposed to do. Instead, what he's supposed to do is contact his lessee, who in turn is supposed to contact the sublessee. That's essentially Rombe versus Badarkali. So let's move on to exchange. Exchange is basically the transfer of ownership of a property in exchange for the ownership of another property. That's it. Nothing much more to it. The last method of transfer that we're going to discuss is gift. A gift is basically you transferring the ownership of the property onto someone else without any consideration in return. Usually it's parents gifting property to their children, so on and so forth. The person giving a gift is a donor and the person receiving a gift is a donee. And if a donee expires before accepting the gift, then it's void. Now coming on to the last phase of the chapter, we talk of intellectual property. Under this we have 5 kinds: trademark, patent, copyright, design, and geographical indication. The purpose of a trademark is to make objects identifiable as belonging to a certain company or institution. So for example, you see your Nike tick, that's trademark. You see your Adidas logo, most logos are trademarked. That's the little TM sign you see on the top. A patent is usually used for scientific inventions. For example, say when someone invented the PCR thermocycler, they can get a patent for it, and the patent owner essentially gets to decide who does and doesn't get to use their invention. Now copyrights are used for mostly artistic works. For example, movies, novels, music, and they get to control who all can use their works. For example, reaction channels. Often music is taken down if someone's reacting to a music video. Next thing is design. To get rights over a design, it's something that's aesthetic in nature. It includes things like shape, color, line, and patterns. Geographical indication refers to something that has characteristics that attribute to the place of origin. For example, Darjeeling tea, Banarasi saris, things like that. And that basically sums up your entire chapter on property. Well, thank you for watching. That's all.